Well, good evening, everyone. Meteorologist Michael Wilhite here with Southern Indiana Weather, bringing you the latest long-range update here. Wow, it's really warm out there today. My goodness, temperatures in the 80s across the area. As you look at satellite and radar, clouds starting to filter out a little bit. Still a fair amount of clouds mixed with some sun out there. We got some rain out to our west that has developed. That's pretty much moving off of our direction. We had a couple of little lone isolated showers down here earlier, but those are pretty much fading out as we head throughout the evening. It's going to be a warm evening out there, and really going to be a warm overnight, too, for that matter. Temperatures tonight not going to go down very much at all. We're looking at temperatures in the mid-60s by the time you wake up here tomorrow morning. Now, let's start to take a look at what you can expect for your day tomorrow. Boy, my computer's going haywire. Apologies for that, folks. As we look into tomorrow, what you can see is there's those storms here on future radar. There they are going away. They'll diminish as we go into the overnight. Tomorrow, we got some spotty shower and thunderstorm chances. Not everyone's going to see it, so, tomorrow we'll run with, let's say a 30%, maybe 40% at best chance of some showers around the area. This just has a couple of little dots here on future radar here and there. Very much a spotty nature, not really a widespread or scattered kind of a thing, just a few, a little dot here and a little dot there, more of a spotty nature again. And then as you head into the overnight, that'll fade to where it's pretty much just about nothing on Wednesday night. And then as you go into Thursday, don't see a whole lot of action here either until later in the afternoon, and then again, it's just real spotty, so there's some questions as to how much we see. Probably not a whole lot of rain coming here in the next couple of days for us. Again, more of a spotty nature. Now, as we head into the longer term, we do have some more rain chances available to us as we put the GFS model here into motion. There's those kind of spotty shower chances as we go in through the day tomorrow and on Thursday as well, but high pressure starts to build in, and by the time Friday comes, I think we should be in pretty good shape to be free and clear of any rain in our area. We do have some systems that's going to pass through our north, and as we get into late Saturday and into Sunday, that's whenever we got some chances for some more showers and thunderstorms, probably lingering through very early on Sunday morning, but then kind of clearing out for later in the afternoon hours. And then as we go into next week beyond that, we've got a string of some nice days really coming up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. What you see is this ridge of high pressure setting up to our southeast. There's questions on how long this ridge of high pressure will end up persisting right now. So if you look at long-term forecasts, you'll see probably different variations on it depending on what model the meteorologist is using. There are some questions. We know we got some more systems that are going to roll through after that, but still very questionable. The farther out you go into this, how much rain we are going to end up seeing. The good news is it looks like the pattern of us raining every single day is breaking down, and we certainly need that. If we can get it to days where it's going to be more of a spotty thing, well, that's certainly going to be a good thing. Now, why is this happening? Well, let's take a look at what's going on in the mid-layers of the atmosphere. As we look at the mid-level jet stream, we're going to go about 40,000 or so feet here up into the atmosphere, what we call the 500 millibar level, and we're going to look at our winds, speeds, and pieces of energy rolling through here. So as we move into Friday, the good news is by the time we come to this weekend, we're going to have a little bit cooler weather to contend with. And in fact, it's going to return into the 70s as we head to Saturday and Sunday and really Monday and probably a little bit on Tuesday. Of us may still stay in the 70s. That'll be a refreshing change. Goodbye to the upper 80s. We're going to have some upper 80s tomorrow and Thursday, but it's looking pretty good for the weekend temperature-wise, and here's the reason why. Notice you got a piece of energy that starts to dip down here on Saturday and Sunday. That's the piece of energy that will bring that cold front through and some shower chances, but as we go through the weekend, just sort of take a look at the direction of movement here as to where everything is from, and pretty much what you're going to see here. Let me get a different color on here to show you. Notice that everything's coming down from the northwest. You'll hear me sometimes refer to that as the northwest flow. And what the northwest flow does is it brings cooler air that is bottled up here in Canada, and it sort of brings it down there. And so the temperatures start to take a plummet that way for us. Now, does that necessarily mean that we are going to have ridiculously cold temperatures? Well, no, it's just going to be slightly cooler than what we're experiencing right now. So that will keep the 80s sort of bottled up down here, whereas we go more in the 70s up here. So it'll be a little bit more pleasant for us as time goes on. Now, as we put this here into motion, that will start to break down, and we will get back into the 80s next week. But watch what starts to develop as you go down and through here. What you see is a ridge of high pressure start to build up the later we get into that period, and that'll of course put us on the southwest flow. And so whenever you've got a winds here coming from your southwest rather than your northwest, it's a complete pattern change. And what you're going to see is very warm temperatures start to funnel their way up into here from the south. That could bring moisture chances with it as well if the high pressure can go far enough to our east. We sometimes call this a ring of fire pattern whenever you see a high pressure down here on the southeast coast here. Remember that winds run clockwise around a high pressure, and so that is going to keep it free from storms down here. But what you'll have is you get this ring of fire pattern that can sometimes happen there, and what you have is that are storms that are riding on the outer rings, which would mean that maybe if it's far enough away, storms could sort of ride in this pattern over us, and we could end up with some stormier and potentially cooler pattern here from those storms with the heat staying bottled up around here. On the other hand, what happens if that southeast ridge sets up shop more like this rather than over here? Well, if that's the case, then what you are going to see is the storms taking more of a pattern like this and us being more in the heaty pattern like this. So there's some questions on this still. That's kind of I know, a tough thing to explain if you don't have a background in weather. But basically, my way of saying, folks, there's going to be a big problems in the forecast as to what comes up. And so every model run is going to be different. Are we going to be in more of that pattern, and are we going to stay more in the hot part of that pattern? Or are we going to be more into the pattern where we can get some of those storms and cool us down a little bit and be a little bit of rain with it? And the question is, we just don't know right now. Right now, a lot of the modeling is indicating that we stay more into that hot kind of pattern, which would keep the high pressure centered more something like this and keep the stormier weather more off to our west out here rather than over us. We'll just have to see whether that really happens or not. But as you see, you put this into motion, that ridge just sort of stays to our southeast and then forces those, basically then, pretty much just forces those systems to go right up to our north or to our west and not really over us. So that will mean that we've got some bigger storms that are going to stay away from us and some drier days coming up if that's indeed the case and it sets up that way. But again, that ridge sets up a little bit over here, well, that could change. So there are some questions about this. Now, as we take a look at this, what it's going to do to our temperatures, what you notice is we're in kind of a warm pattern. And this is looking at our temperature anomaly. And so the orange shades are above normal. The blue shades over here are below normal. And as we put this into motion here, what you're going to see as we head later into the beginnings and middle part of June, we start to get in on some of that according to the ensemble modeling. And don't let that fool you, though, because you see something like this, and you might see a post from some of the weather websites out there, but don't let that fool you. You think, oh, well, we're going to go into a nicely cool pattern. Cooler than normal is what it means, but keep in mind, by the time you get into the middle part of June, you should be near or into the 80 degrees over a good chunk of the area. Our normal high right now as we end May 31 is 75, so by the time we end May, we should definitely be in the, by the time we end June, we should definitely be in the 80s. Let's put the GFS ensembles here into motion, and what you can see, we're looking at temperatures over the next 16 days, and you see, well, we've got some 80s to contend with. Thursday, we're stuck here in the 80s. Here we go on Friday, we're still into the 80s. By the time we get into the weekend, Saturday, we're confined to the 70s for a high temperature. Sunday looks like 70s for a high temperature. Looks like on Monday, we'll be in the 70s again. By the time Tuesday runs around, we're flirting with those 80s. We got mid to upper 70s over a chunk of southern Indiana. Then as we go beyond that, next week, you start to see those 80s move through. And so we still got a good chunk of the area that's going to be around 80 degrees or to the upper 70s. So even though you might see some things like this that suggests that we could have a cooler than normal pattern with this, keep it in mind, the cooler than normal pattern it's predicting is still mid to upper 70s and beyond. So it's not like it's going to be cold by any means, just not screaming hot into the 90s. And, well, I don't know about you, but I'll certainly take that. Now, let's think for a minute then about the longer term beyond this, because this is sort of the shorter term. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be fighting that battle with the southeast ridge as to whether it's going to win out for more of a warmer pattern or more of a cooler pattern for us. And every one of these models is going to change literally from model run to model run. The ensemble data here is run 4 times a day. Every one's going to be different. So we're going to use our best guess right now and kind of put into the middle and say, well, it looks like 70s and 80s are going to dominate the month of June. So, well, that's good. It doesn't look like we've seen any indications of a ton of 90s at this point. So it's not going to be excruciatingly hot. That's one nice thing, the way things look. Let's talk about the longer term, though. We haven't talked about El Nino for a while. El Nino is just about dead. Remember, El Nino is abnormal warming near the equator off the coast of South America and extending into the Pacific. And so let me draw it on kind of the map here. And let me choose a yellow color here. And let's this is the region we're looking at. And what you notice is that we've got a lot of cooler pockets of water that are starting to develop here. What you're seeing is the breakdown of El Nino and the transformation into La Nina. You can really see that if you look at the change in temperatures over the past 7 days, and you can see lots and lots and lots of cooling here in the blue. Warming is here in the red and the oranges, and coolings here in the blues. And what you see is there is a good chunk of this that has had some major cooling take place over the past week, and that's going to continue. In fact, as we just take a look at the Niña 3.4 index, the 3.4 index is basically, folks, going to refer to this particular region of the equator right out in here. That's where we base our El Nino forecasts typically off of. And what you see is that it is tanking. In fact, right now we are pretty much, the latest daily reading here pretty much puts it in what we would call La Nada, neutral conditions. El Nino up here, La Nina down here, and what we would call pretty much La Nada right here in this zone of neutral conditions. And it's been pretty much that way for a little bit now. You notice it'll go to there and then sort of warm back up just a bit, but you notice we have been under the positive 0.5 now pretty much through the past 2 weeks. That's indicating to me that El Nino is just about dealt the death blow. As we take a look here at the beginning of May, we were still here over positive 1. We were still in a fairly decent-sized El Nino, but look how much it has waned over the course of the month. So El Nino is just about dead, and what's it going to do? Well, it's going to change into a La Nina situation pretty quickly. Here we are right about here, and then just sort of notice what it does over the course of time. So we start off May 31 right about here, and this is taking an average of the daily readings over the past little bit, and you notice we're kind of in this neutral category, but the ensemble mean data is sort of taking it in a direction more like this. So, you know, what you're going to see is La Nina starting here at negative 0.5, and so if this is the case, really, you know, let me put a different color on and see a little bit better, but what you're going to see is La Nina would start sort of right in here at this particular line, negative 0.5. So what you're starting to see is by the end of June, the beginning of July, you're getting into that La Nina category, that territory. Now, it wouldn't officially be designated as such by the beginning of July. You got to have 3 months consecutively of being negative 5 or stronger in the negative before you can classify it as La Nina. So it'd be October 1 before we'd really be able to do that if that were the case. But you can see that's what the modeling is indicating. And so what does that particularly mean for us? Well, remember, whenever you have a transition so sharply during the summertime here from El Nino into La Nina so fast, what you typically have is the weather just sort of shuts off as far as rain, and you get drier than normal conditions, and you usually get a hot summer out of that. Now, that said, there are still some indications that we don't know 100% what's going to happen, because you've still got this warm blob of water up in the Gulf of Alaska. It's been there persistently for about 3 years now, and that has been a major influence on us. And that, in fact, that's one of the reasons why we still have so much rain going on right now. What we call this is a positive phase of the PDO, the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. I do not know why my thing is not wanting to write here for you folks, but Having some technical difficulties, I guess. Computer having a hard time catching up, but this is a positive PDO, positive Pacific Decadal Oscillation. Basically, that's the warmer than normal waters you see off of there, and it looks like it's going to stick around. If you look at the temperature change, still a fair amount of warming going on here in the Gulf of Alaska over the last 7 days. It doesn't have any signs of breaking down anytime soon. Well, it's going to be a battle. Will we get those drier than normal conditions? Well, this would indicate potentially, a wet summer based off of this. This could potentially indicate a dry summer. What will win out? We may end up being more normal. It's going to depend on who will win, but remember that this is much stronger right now than what this is. The La Niña is just developing. So I'm not seeing a record drought. I'm not seeing, 2012 repeated all over again. We were already dry by this point in 2012, but I'm not seeing that repeated all over again, folks. But that said, I think there will be a point in time later on in the summer where it does get a lot drier than it is right now, and it will probably get fairly warm this summer. I don't think we're going to see widespread hundreds this summer out of it, the way things look. With all the soil moisture that you have right now, it's going to be really hard to push that hot, but certainly think that we're going to head towards the 90s as we go a little bit later on. It may not happen as much in June, but by the time we start to see El Nino really dealt the death blow and La Nina really kicking in and starting to take off, by the time we head in towards July, I think, until August, I think we're going to have some very hotter months out of that, the way things look to me right now. And of course, if we want to take a little bit longer term look at this, we can look at the JAMS Tech model here, and we can take a look at the seasonal model data with this. Notice this is from June to August. Here's that La Nina forming. Look what this does for us. As you head into the fall, it only spreads, and as you head into the winter time frame, it grows into a pretty sizable La Nina according to the modeling. So that's certainly going to have an effect on our next winter forecast as well. What would that do? Well, this is one of those models that sometimes hits it, sometimes doesn't. Did not hit it at all this past winter. The previous 2 winters, it absolutely nailed it. So it's had some good and some bad with it, but what it's saying right now with that strong La Nina, what it is saying is that, the southeast coast here would have a drier than normal winter, where we're going to have a little bit wetter than normal winter up here in portions of the Midwest. Temperature-wise, it would be warmer than normal over much of the nation. By the way, that is a fairly typical La Nina pattern as far as we're looking at. This is a comparison between what El Nino and La Nina does during the winter, and you will notice here during a La Nina, much of this portion of the nation of the eastern half stays on the warm category, and you got this wet pocket sort of right over here over the Ohio Valley. So right now, with some drier than normal over the southeast, well, that's pretty much exactly what we are seeing on this right now. It's a very classic La Nina setup, and of course that's because what you're seeing here is a very strong La Nina setup. Lots of questions as to whether that will really develop or not. We'll just have to see as time goes on. That's a little preview that we'll be looking at. Of course, it's too early to issue a winter forecast right now, but just know that there are going to be some major changes. And by the way, for you snow lovers, it doesn't mean that you don't get any snow when you have a warmer than normal winter, of course, as you know. Right now, if we had to just, sort of throw a dart at the wall, the indications early on would be to say warm and wet for the Ohio Valley area, Kentuckiana here where we're at, Indiana here in Kentucky, southern Illinois. I'd probably say warmer and wetter than normal just based on first glances here at the modeling. Lots can change between now and then. My final winter forecast won't be released until late October, early November, but that's just sort of a preview right now. Doesn't mean that you can't have snow out of it, but it means it'll probably be more of a rain type of event than it will be a snowy winter here at this point, and it looks like it could be fairly mild. But this is far from over. We've still got this warm blob of water up here to deal with. Will it wane by the time winter comes? Anyone's guess at this point, too far to know, showing no signs of breaking down really right now. But we are seeing that change to La Nina, and we can guarantee that there's going to be some bigger influences coming from us. So it's going to be a wild ride as we head in later on. You can go to southernindianaweather.com, click on 10-day forecast to get your latest 10-day forecast. Folks, 80s dominate the rest of the week. Cooler into the 70s by the weekend, and then back up into the 80s after that. I'm meteorologist Michael Wilhite. Thanks for watching the latest long-range update, folks. Take care.